Entering the world of One Piece had always been the dream of Ezekiel, or rather, the dream of every One Piece fan. But compared to those who find themselves in a new world and wreak havoc with every step, his journey was truly ordinary. He simply fell asleep at home and opened his eyes on this seemingly uninhabited island. The reason he was sure he had likely been transported was because of the fruit that appeared beside him upon arrival. He was also well aware that the apple-shaped fruit with a golden thread in front of him must be a devil fruit. It seemed that his body had changed from his original 20-year-old form to his current 14-year-old appearance due to the transportation. The coastline surrounding him wasn't long, and some materials had been washed ashore, but it wasn't enough for survival. He would have to rely solely on this fruit to survive. Ezekiel rubbed his hands together and prayed to the heavens, then ate the fruit in a few bites. As expected, it tasted like crap but made from apples. It was unpleasant even to describe. He stopped himself from vomiting for some time and waited for a while, but still didn't feel any reaction in his body. Could the effect only occur under certain conditions? Ezekiel was a bit puzzled. As time passed and Ezekiel watched the sky darken, he could no longer sit still. Since the fruit's ability remained unrevealed and there was nothing he could do, he needed to survive. He planned to first walk along the beach and look around. Maybe there was something valuable, and then he would head towards the center of the island. He headed to the beach. He felt a bit weak as he struggled with the water. But suddenly he felt refreshed. It seemed that the devil fruit had begun to work. So, what would happen next? He rummaged through the debris washed ashore, finding packaged food, enough to ensure survival for a while. After all, no one knew if there was food available on the island. After a few hours, he gathered all the supplies, lay down on the soft palm leaves, sweating and looking out at the sea. Finally, he felt the loneliness of the sea. His heart was filled with the excitement brought on by the transportation. At this moment, he really wished to return home. "I just want to play on my mobile phone." Being addicted to his phone, he couldn't live without it, and he couldn't fall asleep unless he spent a few hours on it before bed. In his free time, he missed his mobile phone more and more. "I want a phone. I want a phone. I want a phone." After shouting to the sky 3 times, Ezekiel lowered his head, exhaled, and suddenly trembled. A mobile phone had mysteriously appeared in his hand. It seemed to be the oldest black and white Nokia phone, which could only make calls and send text messages. The fruit I ate turned out to be the legendary fruit of desires. It's said to be the ultimate fruit that can fulfill all wishes, the pinnacle of all fruits in the world, practically a cheat. But damn it. I exchanged it for a mobile phone fruit. What do I need a phone for here? And this kind at that. Ezekiel cursed himself. He made a mistake. How was he going to play with this mobile phone when he could have asked for a Logia fruit? With bitterness, Ezekiel explored the fruit's ability. Currently, he had only 2 abilities. The first was the ability to produce mobile phones, and the second was the communication sector that mobile phones possess. The communication sector would allow Ezekiel and his mobile phone to access communication functions, meaning the mobile phone fruit not only enabled the mobile phone's communication abilities but also turned it into a super satellite. Isn't this an enhanced version of a multifunctional phone? He remembered that the phones in the original anime were actually special snails. Ezekiel stared at the Nokia in his hand, clapped his hands, created another one, and then dialed the number according to the identifier automatically indicated above. "Hello. Hello." He called himself for testing. Ezekiel stopped relying on the devil fruit for survival. He stared wistfully at the sea. At that moment, he suddenly saw several enormous warships appear on the horizon at sea. Were they Marines? Ezekiel smiled joyfully. If they were pirates, he truly wouldn't know what to do. The Marines' warship docked at the shore, and a tall and hefty vice admiral descended with a group of Marines. The large cloak of justice fluttered smoothly in the wind. The vice admiral had a punk hairstyle and a mustache. The overly flashy appearance made Ezekiel recognize him at first glance. It was Vice Admiral Mamunga, a veteran of the Marines. But before Ezekiel could joyfully run over to ask for help, he saw Vice Admiral Mamunga pull out a sheet of paper. This thing. Was it a wanted poster? "Rebel Ezekiel Nefertari, you are under arrest." Mamunga looked indifferently at the stunned Ezekiel before he could react. He was surrounded by a group of Marines and shackled. His hands were bound with sea stone. Ezekiel, who was currently Vilsis if Mamunga was to be believed, completely weakened as he was moved by Thyrines onto their warship and locked in the soul cell. Impossible. How could I be wanted? Isn't Mamunga one of those people who can distinguish between good and evil? After lamenting a little, he leaned slightly on the pedestal, trying with all his might to lift himself up to the edge of the sink filled with clean water and saw his reflection. His body was still his own, although he appeared somewhat younger. But he was still himself. It seemed that during the transport, some inexplicable changes had occurred. Although his body hadn't changed, it had replaced someone else's identity. The 3 meals a day were unexpectedly plentiful. He never saw Mamunga again. He wanted to strike up a conversation with the Marines, but they wore cold expressions. Just 3 days later, Ezekiel the sound of an opening door in his foggy sleep. It was the first time the cell door had been opened. He heard a voice. "Brother, wake up." His body shook as his spirit awakened, feeling relieved that he was not on Earth. In front of him was a splendid little girl with long blue hair, long eyelashes, and coal-black eyes. She looked only about 13 or 14 years old. Ezekiel's mind gradually returned, and then he saw, besides Mamunga and a few soldiers, a tall man with a flushed face. He was wearing a crown and a dark robe. Was it King of Alabasta Cobra? Then the little girl who called him brother was Princess Vivi. Had he become the Prince of Alabasta? Cobra took a deep breath and looked at Ezekiel, then spoke to Mamunga with a face full of shame, anger, and frustration. "Vice Admiral Mamunga, are you taking him?" His voice was filled with disappointment. "Your Majesty, after all, this child merely went to sea with pirates and didn't have time to commit any evil. Although there's a bounty of 1,000 belly on him, he is of noble birth." Fleet Admiral Sengoku personally dealt with this. Initially, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. But considering his royal status and his 15-year age, we were ordered to return him, Mamunga said. "I am so grateful," Cobra finally admitted, since this was his own son. He truly did not want the Marines to take his son, but he wanted nothing to do with a pirate. The pirate mindset was genuinely disgusting to him, and he turned his face away and angrily said to Ezekiel, "Return to me and reflect on your behavior. You are not allowed to leave the castle for 3 years. Damn. I don't want to be a prince." After being returned to the palace castle of Alabasta, he gradually cleared his thoughts and adapted to his current identity. Alabasta could be said to be the largest country known in the world of One Piece. In the comics, it is also called a super kingdom. The main reason for this is its vast lands and large population. The permanent army numbers 600,000. If conscription is included, it is a great empire with more than 1 million soldiers. In the final stages of the rebellion in the original book, the number of the royal army and the rebels combined exceeded 2 million. It is located on a massive island called Sandy Island in the Grand Line, but it is more of a small continent than an island. There are at least 20 towns. In the original book, 7 or 8 towns were described. Many. If you calculate based on the ratio of the population to the size of the standing army, this country has at least 2 to 3 billion people, otherwise, it would be impossible to maintain such a large army for a long time. Alabasta is incomparable to other island nations like Drum Island, the Kingdom of Goa, and even Dressrosa. Thinking about Crocodile made Ezekiel toothache. Vivi was forced to join the Baroque works when she was 14. After 2 years, she would meet Luffy. Judging by Vivi's current age, Crocodile now has a fairly solid base in Alabasta and could attack the Alabasta royal family at any time. Philsis pulled out his phone again and couldn't help but ponder. Every fruit has its own unique special ability. Even zone fruits have inherent super resilience. Theoretically, there are no completely useless devil fruits, so what unique ability does the mobile fruit have? Since he didn't know how to develop the fruit's ability, he simply began creating mobile phones consistently. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. Even developing fruit abilities should adhere to this basic rule. One by one, mobile phones were created until he felt completely exhausted, and at least 100 mobile phones had been made. Ezekiel was stunned and suddenly sensed a new message in his consciousness. The mobile fruit had indeed awakened a new ability. Elementary network function. Additional capabilities for creating mobile phones have also emerged. It is no longer just a previous black and white communication device, but a small smartphone with a color screen function, flashing the familiar 2G signal, capable of downloading micro images and text network signals. To hell with this. It seems he can download mobile phone capabilities via the internet. He himself is the only server for all mobile phones. He quantitatively assessed the mobile fruit's ability using familiar information in his mind, and a message appeared before his eyes. Level 2. Phone memory 0 first gigabyte. With 2G network function. Download speed is 50 kilobytes per second. Download range is 1 kilometer. It seems that in addition to upgrading the phone, each time someone uses their phone, the phone's memory will increase by 1 megabyte, meaning that if 1,000 people use it, its memory will increase by 1 gigabyte. The volume of memory directly determines its capability, how many abilities are loaded. But there's a major limitation. If you want to download this capability, you must be within a certain range. This apparently only increases by leveling up. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the door. "Your Royal Highness, have you returned?" He stood up and answered, then saw a man with an Arabian scarf on his head, dark purple makeup under his eyes, and purple four-pointed stars on his white clothing. He had a long sword hanging at his waist, and his eyes were serious. A meticulous person, holder of the devil fruit powers of the zone fruit, the commander of Alabasta's guard, Pell. He paused, wondering why the commander of the guard had come to him. Seeing the strange boxes arranged around, Pell said nothing. He was silent for a moment, then spoke to Ezekiel. "Your Royal Highness, you must not be so hasty. The power of this villain is too great if the Marines hadn't found you." Ezekiel was astonished. From Pell's words, he understood that this guy seemed to know that there were issues with Crocodile and that Ezekiel didn't run away from home to become a pirate, as everyone initially thought, but was planning something related to Crocodile. "But what happened to you also convinced me of one thing." Pell slowly knelt down. "Your Highness, forgive me for not trusting you earlier. Now I know that Crocodile is not kind. The rains in Alabasta this year, it's all his doing." "Rise, Pell." Philsis pondered for a moment. "Who else knows about this besides us? Currently, in Alabasta, only the two of us know Crocodile's true nature. Perhaps His Majesty has some suspicions too, but there is no solid evidence," Pell said. "Pell, do you believe me? You have proven yourself a true member of the royal family, and I'm ready to swear my loyalty," Pell said firmly. "It seems the real Ezekiel fought Crocodile and now he is dead. The gap between our power and Crocodile's is too great, and now isn't the best time to reveal his schemes, not even to my father," he said. "But now that Vice Admiral of the Marines, Mamunga, is in Alabasta, why don't we?" Pell hesitantly suggested. "Pell, you must know that Crocodile is a warlord, and the warlord are pirates authorized to operate by the world government and the Marines jointly. Without solid evidence, we cannot command the world government and the Marines to attack him." He said no more. Pell also paused upon hearing these words and nodded. "I see. We can't disclose this to the king and princess." "It's all right, Pell, we have other important matters." Ezekiel waved his hand and then pulled out his mobile phone. "This is a new type of communication device created by the ability of the devil fruit I consumed. I hope it will become popular in Alabasta." "Yes," Pell beamed. Now that he had decided to be loyal, there was no need to question His Highness about every decision and every matter. From the discussion they just had, he realized deeply that although this person is young, he is by no means an ordinary child. Like a virus, the device known as the mobile phone, also called a cell phone, quickly became popular in Reborn at the capital of Alabasta. One could say that its phone functionality is on par with the technological level of 21st century Earth's mobile phones in terms of communication. This is because the largest Achilles heel of the local Den Mushi is their exorbitant cost. This type of communication device is a special form of life created by the world government's research institute using snails as a basis for biological transformation. The cultivation process requires complete manual management, and each phone snail needs to master mimicry skills before it can be used. Thus, in the world of One Piece, only the nobility and the government have sufficient financial resources. Owning one is simply a dream for everyone else. Moreover, even the smallest phone snail is not easy to carry around. After all, it's a living creature, not a machine. It requires daily feeding to survive. Taking care of it is a burden in itself. Ezekiel's mobile phone perfectly solves these two problems. As a mechanical product, it requires no maintenance, and as a devil fruit product, it doesn't need charging. Even more importantly, the price is so low that civilians can afford it. The cost of a mobile phone is only 5,000 belly, and the monthly communication fee is 300 belly. Meanwhile, any Den Mushy phone snail, even an island one, despite not incurring communication costs, would require at least 100,000 belly, and a large transnational one not less than 50,000 or even 1 million belly. It seems that the limit of Vilsis's daily mobile phone production is 3,000 units, and it will continue to increase with daily physical exertion. Due to the extremely low prices and excellent quality, the mobile phones quickly triggered a massive wave. Thousands of units were sold in just 3 days. However, Ezekiel has yet to load a worthy capability. And he didn't like it. Additionally, the communication range was insufficient. People's perception of new things is limited, but the price of mobile phones is really too low. It's so low that it's not difficult to buy one as a toy with the average salary of a Marine. 500 belly, that's just the price of 5 newspapers. It's almost a free gift. Finally, this power caused a stir within the Marines stationed in Alabasta. Starting with the first soldiers who admired the officer holding the phone, they later appeared with senior officers who believed that mobile phones were more convenient than the den mushy. But what Ezekiel regretted somewhat was that even when Pell personally gave Vice Admiral Mamunga a phone, he had no intention of using it. He simply tossed it aside. He feared that using the new phone might lead to leaking secrets. Ezekiel was very disappointed to learn this. Basic combat skills 9 megabytes. Intermediate combat machine 50 megabytes. Basic zone lev application 1 gigabyte. Beginner's armament hacky 500 megabytes. Observation hacky 500 megabytes. Ezekiel hungrily surveyed the many abilities but didn't choose to download any. Currently, he had limited memory and hadn't developed skills for deletion or overwriting, so he had to be careful with the downloads. On the street in the royal capital of Alubarna, a tall man in a cloak was observing the people going in and out, holding a black box in his hands. Occasionally, strange sounds were heard, and then the person holding the box would raise it and press a specific button. Soon, someone's voice would come from the box. They were discussing how someone in Alabasta had made such a contraption, and sold it at a price affordable to civilians. This was truly interesting. The man, who originally came to monitor Crocodile's activities, became intrigued and approached the man with the mobile phone. Brother, where did you buy that device?" He was momentarily taken aback, then looked at the man in the cloak without hesitation. "In the alley in front of the house, it's a very useful thing, something you can't miss out on." The man paused upon hearing these words, then nodded and entered the alley. Such a price was indeed incredible. Ezekiel, who was confined in the Alabasta palace, suddenly shivered all over and sensed that a powerful presence was using his mobile phone. It was like fireflies lighting up the endless darkness. This was extremely conspicuous, a real scene he could observe. Freezing Logia Awakening Application 100 gigabytes. First Class Armament Hacky 20 gigabytes. Premium Observation Hacky 20 gigabytes. Advanced Level of the 6 Styles of the Marines 20 gigabytes. Ezekiel took a deep breath of Freezing Logia. Okiji and Alabasta. The weakest one still requires 20 gigabytes of memory, while the largest volume for the Freezing Logia requires 100 gigabytes. And there's no need to train from scratch. If you download it, you can directly acquire a fruit ability equivalent to Okiji's. This is the incredible power of the telephone fruit. Although Vil is currently limited by the phone's memory, as he levels up, he will eventually be able to download Okiji's ability. Okiji fiddled with the mobile phone in his hand and felt that if security issues could be resolved, this thing should be quickly promoted and distributed at the middle and lower levels of the Marines. It's a great invention. Who on earth made this? He looked at the vendor and pondered. The vendor only said it was a big man from the palace. Okiji couldn't help but wonder if it was the King of Alabasta. Yes, otherwise who would sell such a useful thing at such a low price? Thinking of this, Okiji felt relieved and bought a few more at once, planning to take them with him to distribute to the Marines. The central oasis city of Alabasta is a rainy place. In the Baroque Works headquarters, watching the Bananawani fight each other for food, Crocodile took a lit cigar and looked at the mobile phone lying in front of him. "An interesting toy," he commented. He was already fully aware of the phone's origin. After all, what happened in the Alabasta Palace was no secret to him. Thus knowing who was involved in this promising business could be considered a useful tool. So then, after the royal family of Alabasta is over, Roan and the country is robbed, he will become a member of Baroque Works, allowing him to atone for the crime of the royal family. But when the time comes, the price of this thing should be at least 20 times higher. For him, Ezekiel was merely a pawn, lucky to escape a strike at the moment. However, Crocodile was clearly unaware that the mobile phones were actually created by the power of a devil fruit, and this power was far beyond his imagination. Mr. 2 is returning. Crocodile thought about something, and smiled his crocodile smile. Head to the capital and arrange a meeting with the old king in a few days. Then he waited for him to leave, and began constructing a plan to completely annihilate Alabasta. Mr. 2's ability to transform into other people is the key to success. In the palace. Igram, what is that guy doing? Princess Vivi asked the senior security officer. Igram. Are you speaking of His Royal Highness the Prince? He is still in custody and seems to have become very close with Pell. I don't know exactly what he's doing. Igram has too many responsibilities and knew little about Vil. The same goes for King Cobra. As a renowned virtuous king, he was so busy every day that he had no time even for sleep, and sometimes he was even less comfortable than a commoner, especially now. I hope that guy learns his lesson. Vivi said angrily. Igram could only sigh. After all, what could he say against the prince? Today's Alabasta, you could say, is on the brink of life and death. That's not an exaggeration. Almost all cities, except the capital, are experiencing a water shortage. It hasn't rained in all of Alabasta for a year, and if it weren't for King Cobra, who gave all his wealth from the national treasury and desperately sent drinking water to other cities, his prestige might have fallen to the extreme, but he was helping the people. Because of Cobra's actions, no one doubted that the royal family used dance powder to gather rain clouds in the capital, causing drought in other areas. The truth became known only after Shaka and Pell got to know him better. He immediately felt intense pressure from Crocodile, who had already begun implementing his Utopia operation. This was nothing short of managing the rain to frame the royal family, then allowing Alabasta to plunge into chaos and seizing the opportunity to capture the legendary ancient weapon Pluton. The first step of this plan was to have no rain for 3 years, and now the first year had passed. 3 days later, after Ezekiel and Pell had been desperately manufacturing and selling mobile phones, they finally sold 10,000 mobile phones successfully. At that moment, Ezekiel felt a sharp pain in his consciousness, as if it exploded. He was happy because his fruit had awakened. Level 3. Phone memory 0.21 GB. With 2G network function. Download speed is 100 kilobytes per second. Download range is 3 kilometers. Since the download range became 3 kilometers, sometimes you can sense Okiji at the edge of this range. If he gets a bit closer, Ezekiel will be able to download Okiji's ability. If he downloads the 6 styles from Okiji, he can compete with Crocodile. Ezekiel wants to become stronger. Whether it's Haki or the 6 styles, he has too many options, including the freezing fruit. Ezekiel decided to first download Pell's physical skills to have more physical strength for making mobile phones. Ability, intermediate physical skills, Pell 200 megabytes, download time is 34 minutes. After all, using the power of the devil fruit entirely depends on physical support. With Bill's current physique, he can produce at least 10,000 mobile phones a day. Your Royal Highness. Yes. Pell was stunned by Ezekiel's audacity. He didn't know what Ezekiel was doing, but in the end, he knew that these phones were created by his devil fruit, and perhaps not just for earning berries. After all, the price is nearly free. Every day more than 10,000 units can be sold. Now, 100,000 units have been sold. The ability level of the mobile fruit has improved again. Level 4. Phone memory 0.100 GB. With 2G network function. Download speed is 200 kilobytes per second. Download range is 5 kilometers. The memory capacity is now 100 gigabytes. The download speed has increased to 200 kilobytes/s, and the download range has extended to 5 kilometers. At this moment, he was finally able to clearly pinpoint Okiji's location, and without hesitation, he opted to download the freezing fruit. Ability Awakening Application, Freezing Fruit, Okiji 100 gigabytes, download time 6 days. 6 days. Ezekiel needs a full 6 days to acquire Okiji's ability. If Okiji leaves the 5 kilometer range during this period, the download will be interrupted. Fortunately, he remains in place. As long as Aokiji is within 5 kilometers of Ville, there's no need to restart the download. Ezekiel slightly increased the price of mobile phones, but surprisingly, the sales volume didn't decrease, it increased. People are afraid that this type of affordable mechanical phone, like the Den Den Mushi, might suddenly become more expensive. 5 days passed, and Aokiji was in the capital. After all, he was pursuing lazy justice, and had been here for half a month. He headed to the rainy region, intending to officially meet with Crocodile. Ezekiel suddenly felt the download interrupt, and his expression turned grim. Damn. Only a few hours left. He looked up and said to the puzzled Pell. Pell, I want to leave the palace. Pell was shocked. Your Majesty, it's too dangerous, and you're under house arrest. Did you forget what happened last time? Pell, this time I will be careful enough. Crocodile won't kill me so easily. At most, I'll be imprisoned. But I must go. This might be the last chance for the people of Alabasta to regain their dignity. Trust me. Ezekiel was anxious. Even though lazy Aokiji was very slow, he would soon lose his trail if he didn't catch up. Your Royal Highness the Prince. Pell hesitated for a moment, then clenched his teeth and took the form of a falcon, bowing slightly and saying, I'll get you out of here. The falcon flies over the arid land. It's said to be a desert country. In reality, it's only relatively dry. There are deserts everywhere, but not all are barren. An inland sea runs right through half of the country from the Great Harbor. In this region, oases are scattered in all directions, and the main themes here are heavy rainfall and strong evaporation. Only part of the uninhabited area between the cities is truly uninhabited, and in the far northern part of the country, there's a world-famous super desert. Apart from that, Alabasta is not desolate. Pell carried Ezekiel over the lands of Alabasta, and from a distance he saw black dots in the desert. Is that your target? Pell's falcon eyes are sharp, and he vaguely saw a tall and slender figure in a cloak, but he could not discern its identity. As if sensing someone observing him, Aokiji slowly released his observation haki to a distance of 5 kilometers. Aokiji was not interested in these people, especially after recognizing Pell, an official of this country. As for the child Pell was carrying, it didn't concern him. Aokiji was interested only in Crocodile, and what he might do. He had some suspicions, but currently there was no evidence. And at present he had no opportunity to take any action. An hour passed. 2 hours passed. Aokiji finally became a bit wary. According to common sense, Pell should be several times faster than him, and he can easily overtake him, yet he still lingers behind without any urgency, not even trying to catch up. So who is this guy with him? Only after about 4 hours did the tired falcon hear a slightly surprised voice of a young man behind him. All right, Pell, let's head back. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Vila's mouth. The freezing fruit had reached an awakened state. He had obtained it. 100 gigabytes of memory were completely filled, and there was no hope for additional space. Thus he barely managed to download Aokiji's fruit ability, without having to delete Pell's physical skills. Aokiji stopped in confusion and turned his head. They're gone. Pell and some guy were mysteriously following him, and inexplicably left. What did these two want? Aokiji looked around, and saw no one nearby. Cold ice appeared, freezing the sand beneath his feet, and he effortlessly glided forward on the ice. In fact, such almost invincible fruits are highly valued in desert countries. After all, ice melts and turns into water. The capital of the Kingdom of Alabasta. In the palace, King Cobra was pacing back and forth anxiously, looking at Agrum with some anger. How could the prince disappear? Didn't I tell you to keep an eye on him? He was truly worn out. He looked very haggard, and his hair was slightly disheveled. Vivi had never seen her father like this before, and she was too scared to speak. Sorry. Your Majesty, it's my fault. I shouldn't have let Pell, who is so close to His Royal Highness, be the one to watch over him. Igrum half knelt before him. Hey. The anger on Cobra's face disappeared, and he sighed gloomily, then personally helped Agrum to his feet. I'm sorry, Agrum. I lost my temper. It's just that this is a critical period, and if the boy makes a mistake, I would have a hard time explaining it to the people. Your Majesty, Pell is not a foolish person. Since he and His Royal Highness vanished together, I believe it must be something important, Igrum said thoughtfully. That bastard brother. Vivi kept repeating those words with tears streaming down her face. At that moment, the palace gate swung open. Cobra raised his head and looked ahead. He saw a tall man in a cloak with slicked back hair, holding a cigar in one hand and a sharp golden hook instead of the other, slowly entering the palace, followed by several men and women. Cobra recognized this man. It was Shichibukai Crocodile, a difficult individual to deal with. He is now a hero in Alabasta. Over the years he spent in Alabasta, he founded an organization called Baroque Works. Even Cobra knew little about this organization. They made every effort to capture all the pirates in the Alabasta region, which the world government allowed, and both the world government and the Marines encouraged this behavior. It could be said that the warlord dealt with a large number of pirates. At the same time, the people of Alabasta also greatly trust Crocodile, and even now, his direct entry into the palace does not incite public anger. Some people are even more satisfied with him than with Cobra as their king. Hey Cobra, long time no see. Crocodile took a deep drag on his cigar and then slowly exhaled the smoke in an intricate shape into the air. Long time no see, said Cobra, glancing at him and shielding Vivi behind his back. He instructed Igrum to take her to a room. Igrum hesitated for a moment but finally nodded in agreement and reluctantly left. After all, he was calm and not worried that Crocodile would do anything extraordinary right now, not only because of the world government but also because Vice Admiral Mamunga of the Marines was still in Alabasta. Crocodile would never choose this time even if he needed to do something. As Cobra and Igrum expected, this time Crocodile did not do anything out of the ordinary. He came personally to introduce Cobra to a new capable subordinate. A strangely dressed man resembling a ballet dancer clad in a magnificent ballet costume with peculiar feminine makeup was actually male. His hairy legs were quite conspicuous, perhaps keeping him warm in winter, though, unfortunately for him, there's no winter in Alabasta. Your Majesty, his name is Bentham. Bentham smiled broadly, baring his teeth, and extended his right hand to Cobra. Cobra had no choice but to grit his teeth and shake his hand. Seeing them shake hands, Crocodile feigned a faint smile. All right, I have something to attend to, so I'll be going. Cobra remained very wary of Crocodile. However, in both direct and indirect conflicts, Crocodile had indeed contributed greatly to Alabasta. In fact, he also had the right to enter and exit the palace ever since he was awarded the National Hero Medal last year. As Cobra departed, Crocodile took a drag from his cigar and inhaled deeply. At this moment the door opened again, and Crocodile slowly turned his head to see a tall figure completely shrouded in a cloak, with one of the two Zone Devil Fruit users in the country, Pell, standing beside him. Pell. Crocodile looked at Pell with interest. Are you interested in joining my ranks? Ezekiel noticed Crocodile before entering the palace, so he made a simple disguise, using the freeze fruit to fully mimic Okiji. His eyes glinted. Crocodile. Do you really think I don't know about your plot? His Royal Highness has already uncovered everything about you. Pell drew his sword without hesitation and stood before Crocodile. Immediately, Mr. One, standing next to Crocodile, transformed his hand into a blade to confront him. Ezekiel looked at Crocodile, who was smiling silently. It was the first time in his life that he'd encountered this hero and the first boss before the Grand Line. If it had been a few hours ago, he would still have been afraid of him, but not anymore. At this moment, he had no reason to acknowledge his superiority. That child. Crocodile's eyes flashed. Trash, just scum. He couldn't say anything to Cobra. Crocodile wanted to verify if the prince, who seemed to know something, truly hadn't said anything to Cobra. Even without real evidence, this could cause him significant trouble as long as the Marines were around. Suddenly, a sandstorm appeared. But a gust of cold wind silently spreading around lifted his clothing. Crocodile's pupils narrowed. That sense of unwarranted risk always made him cautious. He didn't want to take any chances. A terrifying icy cold emanated from Ezekiel. In an instant, the entire area of the vast palace turned to ice. People were frozen and became ice sculptures. Mr. One lost the ability to resist, his iron blades turning to ice. Only now did Crocodile's perception of the cloaked man completely change. Crocodile, if you really think you can cause trouble in Alabasta with your abilities, let us be your opponents, Pell told him indifferently, while at the same time he looked at him with blazing eyes. He vaguely knew that this was likely the ability of His Royal Highness's fruit, but it was clearly Admiral Okiji's ability, whom they had just been observing. But what he didn't know was that Ezekiel had not gained just one ability, but the entire power. When Blackbeard inherited Whitebeard's fruit, he couldn't use it to its full potential like the old man, but if the fruit's ability was loaded with Ezekiel ability, then this power was at its full level. Crocodile thought the person in front of him was Okiji, and his scalp tingled slightly, feeling some stifling pressure. All his abilities were completely shattered by the icy cold and pressure. This guy who can freeze to death at will is definitely Okiji. Crocodile looked at Okiji, not believing he would dare to kill him, and with a contemptuous expression, raised his hand with the golden hook. Faced with such a situation, he had no choice but to fight to prove his strength and regain it. But Ezekiel felt secure. Terrifying dust exploded under the palace, breaking through the ice and forming a huge sand blade. Fortunately, the palace was enormous enough, otherwise, it wouldn't have sufficed for these two men. Ezekiel stepped in front of Pell, and coldness quickly emanated from his body, as 5 cold streams condensed in his palm. With a wave of his hand forward, Ezekiel shot 5 icicles into the sandstorm, instantly freezing the massive dust. Admiral-level Devil Fruit abilities are currently in no way comparable to Crocodile's abilities. Just like when Okiji repelled Doflameho, who wanted to kill Smoker without even moving his hands. Crocodile, in shock, looked at the frozen sand and felt the chill in his hands and feet. This is Admiral-level power. Thinking this, Crocodile lunged forward again. His golden hook fell off, revealing an inner hook full of poison, and he struck at Will's head. The hook just broke through the hard ice covering Ezekiel and froze. And Ezekiel didn't have a drop of blood. So far, the true face of the man in the cloak was not visible, although Crocodile needed no confirmation because there couldn't be a second freezing Logia fruit. In the next moment, Crocodile's body was frozen halfway by the cold. He stopped resisting and his eyes became fierce and terrifying. But Ezekiel, in the end, did not finish him off. Even though he had Okiji's fruit ability, it was still too weak in the eyes of other opponents he might encounter. At the back of the palace, in Princess Vivi's room, who is Cobra's daughter, Igrum, and the king tried to calm the princess. Vivi, don't be afraid, everything is fine now. Father is a jerk. Brother is a jerk. Vivi squatted down and cried, today is my 14th birthday. But the two she was cursing had completely forgotten about it. Igrum felt a bit awkward and stepped aside, because even he hadn't thought of it. No wonder Vivi was so angry today, but with Crocodile's visit and Ezekiel's disappearance, it clearly wasn't the time for a celebration. A strong tremor rippled through the entire palace. Cobra was shocked. Could it be that Crocodile and the Marine had a fight? He and Igrum exchanged glances, told Vivi not to worry, and ran out the door together towards the palace hall. The earthquake in the palace also caught the attention of the Marine stationed nearby. Soon, Mamunga stormed into the palace. He was obliged to protect the royal family. Damn it. Could Crocodile actually dare to deal openly with the royal family of Alabasta? Mamunga got angrily. He had seen Crocodile enter the capital, but after all, Crocodile was a warlord, and the Marines had no reason to arrest him. But Mamunga did not expect him to dare to take such a rebellious action. Now, even if he's a warlord, there are clear reasons for arrest. The first to arrive was Cobra, and the sight in the hall truly shocked him. He saw that the entire hall had turned into an icy castle, with walls adorned with exquisite ice reliefs, and in the middle of the hall stood lifelike ice sculptures. Including Crocodile himself, all 5 of his subordinates he had brought were frozen. The ice sculptures were immobilized in various poses. The floor bore traces of immense forces, sand and dust had rushed in and been frozen by some unknown power. This scene appeared as a magnificent and incredible spectacle, where human endeavor clashed with the irresistibly majestic forces of nature. At this moment, Cobra saw Prince Ezekiel, who seemed surprised, and Pell, who also remained silent. Cobra was momentarily speechless and didn't dare think that this was done by Ezekiel. Cobra and Agrum simply could not comprehend what was happening, or who was responsible. They had a feeling it might be that person. At this time, Mamunga also arrived at the scene with other Marine officers. When he saw Crocodile frozen as an ice sculpture, his expression was one of satisfaction. The initial thought of capturing a warlord with Marine forces and justice was completely lost. Everything before him was clearly the work of an admiral. After all, in his opinion, only Okiji possesses such an ability. Although he had heard that Admiral Okiji had arrived in Alabasta, he never thought he would directly confront Crocodile. Yet, Admiral Okiji was nowhere to be seen. Cobra's knowledge was also quite advanced, at least the scene before him gave a clear indication of who must have done it, so he silently glanced at Mamunga, then irritably turned his head to Will and said, "Bastard, where have you been? You've gotten yourself in trouble again. Go to your room." He absolutely didn't want his children involved in this matter, not even indirectly. After all, this was a battle between the Marines and the warlord, between Admiral Okiji and Crocodile. Clearly, a child had no place here. "Father. It's terrible." It seemed Ezekiel wanted to say something. "Shut up. To your room, quickly." Cobra interrupted him. "I'm sorry, Vice Admiral Mamunga, for my son causing you trouble." Cobra added, looking at Mamunga. "Relax, Your Majesty. I understand." Mamunga nodded prudently, knowing that Cobra did not want to interfere between the Shishibukai and the Marines. Moreover, it was the Admiral's responsibility in the first place, and Cobra couldn't let Alabasta take Crocodile upon itself. Pell looked amazed and said nothing, just listening to King Cobra's words. Meanwhile, he slowly approached the prince. His face slightly twitched. "Your Majesty, you truly don't know what kind of son you have." Pell thought. He had just witnessed with his own eyes that His Royal Highness, merely 15 years old, used the power of the freezing fruit to easily defeat Crocodile and his crew. This wasn't some random attack, it was a decisive victory. The prince is the true guardian Saint Alabasta has eagerly awaited for centuries. Pell's eyes were burning with this thought. He swore his